A massive conservative shift may be hitting South Africa, and the recent UK election result has foreshadowed this. With the South African elections coming in November, it appears that a massive conservative shift could be underway in the country, whereby voters at large shift from the most leftward-leaning parties to the right. And this seems to be happening in different ways. Now, what's really interesting is that recently the United Kingdom had their local elections, and I believe that the results that we see there could actually be foreshadowing what may happen in South Africa. And so in this video, we're going to discuss, first of all, why these sorts of international results and developments could be influencing South Africa, and second of all, how this rightward shift in South Africa is unfolding before our very eyes. Now, before we get into this, could I please remind you to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already? It's completely free, and all you have to do is click on the subscribe button below the video. If you would like to support the channel and enjoy additional perks such as members-only videos, you can do so by clicking on the join button below. Now let's get into this. So the first thing that we need to discuss is the UK election result and why it is so significant. What we have seen is a massive surge in support for the Reform Party, which of course is the newish right-wing party led by Nigel Farage, which basically seems to be usurping the Conservative Party. Now, as we can see, in England's councils, Reform went up from having just 2 councils in the past election to 1,454. At the same time, we've seen Labour lose terribly. I mean, they're less than half of what they had in the past. We then saw how the Lib Dems have come up with 152 seats gained, and the Conservative Party, of course, collapsing as well. They now only have 801 seats. And so this is a massive victory for Reform in England. Even when we look at the Scottish and Welsh parliaments, we see a massive change. You see, Reform now has 17 seats, up from no seats in Scotland, making them the joint second largest party there. And of course, the Conservatives have really struggled. They've basically collapsed compared to Reform, and Labour is also slipping. If we then take a look at the Welsh side, as you can see, there's this very complicated name here. I do not know how to pronounce it, but it's the Welsh Council. So if we take a look at them, we see that Reform went up from having absolutely no seats to 34 seats, making them the second largest party. And then Labour, which used to be the largest party, has lost 35 seats, bringing them down to just 9 seats. As for the Conservatives, they lost 22 seats, bringing them down to just 7. Now, this result is a massive rightward swing in favor of the Reform Party. If we take a look at the UK general election results in 2024, we see how the Reform actually did fairly well. If we look at their share of the vote, they got 14.3%, which actually made them the third largest party in the UK. But because they have a first-past-the-post system whereby the winner takes all in each constituency, they only got 5 seats. And as you can see, Labour were the big winners, Conservative really got pummeled. And then you had Liberal Democrats, Scottish National Party, Sinn Féin, Independents, which of course are all just different independent candidates, and then finally Reform UK. And if we actually go a little bit further down, we see the vote share, so the percentage, and as I said before, Reform UK was third. And so this is a really massive result that happened now in 2026 for Reform, whereby they seem poised to become Britain's largest party in the next general election. But what's also interesting is how Rupert Lowe formed the Restore Britain Party. They only participated in, I think, 9 council seats, which is in the Great Yarmouth area where Rupert Lowe generally contends, and they won all of the seats that they contested. So they too, as a staunchly right-wing party, which much like the Reform Party are right of the Conservative Party, are also getting some real momentum. And so we see how there's this massive rightward shift in the UK electorate. Now, you might be asking yourself, well, what does this have to do with South Africa? So we've seen how with social media and in this information age, we're becoming an increasingly global society. We're seeing how on podcasts, for example, people are getting information from political developments across the world in a way that they never ever had before. And while generally speaking, South Africa seems to be behind the trend of other countries, they do eventually catch up. For example, we saw how woke culture to a small extent came to South Africa, but it was after it happened in America and then spread to Europe. We've seen, for example, how just 10 years ago, if anybody criticized the ANC or BEE, they would be labeled a racist. And of course, back in the day, being called racist in South Africa was a really scary thing to happen. It was almost viewed as a dangerous thing to happen. Whereas these days, it seems that the term racist has little meaning due to it being overused so much in situations where it really isn't appropriate. And of course, we've seen a similar thing in the US as well. We've also seen how in the politics of South Africa in elections, much progress has been made since a few years ago. I mean, I remember having conversations with people where I would think, well, how on earth is the ANC ever going to get below 50%? And the big debate was, will they ever lose their majority? Now the debate is, will they remain the biggest party? How long will it be until they completely crash? When are they going to hit 30%? When are they going to hit 20%? And so we're seeing how political developments are happening at an accelerated pace. It just seems that everything's happening thicker and faster. And of course, we also see how the South African media landscape has changed. Much like how you sort of had that mainstream media leftward shift in America, we've seen it in South Africa as well. But then, of course, the alternative media seems to be to the right. And again, that seems to be something we saw in America too. And so it really does seem as if whatever trends are happening overseas, just like this recent election in the UK, they make their way to South Africa eventually. And what's really interesting is that it seems that even in this next election in South Africa in November, a rightward shift may already be happening. And here's the evidence. So there are two signs of the rightward shift happening. The first sign is concrete. It's the by-election data that we have. The second one is polling data. Now, to start off with the by-election data, we need to understand two major developments that are going on. Firstly, we're seeing how people seem to be leaving the DA and heading towards parties such as the Freedom Front Plus. Of course, this is a rightward shift in and of itself because the Freedom Front Plus is on the right. They're a conservative party, whereas the DA is a fairly centrist liberal party. Some would argue center-left. Some would say center-right. But ultimately, they're a liberal party, generally center-left. The second thing that's happening is a shift from parties such as the ANC and other like-minded parties to the DA. Now, I understand that people who watch this channel might say, well, the DA is still a liberal party. But what we need to understand is that the general perception out there, especially amongst a majority black audience, is different. For them, they view the DA as being a right-leaning party because, again, compared to the likes of the EFF, ANC, and MK, the DA are to the right. This is an accurate thing. The only thing is they may not realize exactly what constitutes, a sort of centrist liberal party and what constitutes a right-wing conservative party. But that's a discussion for another day. The bottom line is that people's perceptions do matter, and of course they differ depending on who you're speaking to. And ultimately, in the voters' minds, a shift from the ANC to the DA is a rightward shift, as is a shift from the DA to the Freedom Front Plus and to the PA, which does deserve a little bit of a different reading, but we'll get to that later. Now, starting off with the graph we have in front of us, we've seen how the DA seems to be growing in popularity in traditional ANC wards. We've seen this in by-elections in Gauteng, Mpumalanga, KZN, and even in the Western Cape recently, where we actually saw the DA do quite well in a ward in Cape Town. Now, it's a traditional ANC ward. It's a majority black township ward, yet they went from 8% to 16%, whereas the ANC and other like-minded parties dropped. In front of us, we have the result for the Emalahleni Ward 26, which is in Mpumalanga. And this is traditionally an ANC stronghold. And as we can see from the graph here, In 2019, the ANC was the clear front runner. They've always seemed to hold very strong in this specific ward, and even to this current day, they have a lot of support. But something very interesting happened, which is that in the 2025 by-election, the DA won the seat off of the ANC. On the left, we can see how in the 2021 local election, the DA got 667 votes, the ANC over 1,000, so they were the clear front runner. And yet now the script has been flipped. We see that the DA narrowly defeated the ANC with 839 votes to 809 votes. But this isn't the only example of this. In Governor Mbeki, Ward 14, also in Mpumalanga, an ANC stronghold, we see how the DA managed to rise to become the second largest party in this ward, whereas they were actually the fourth largest in the 2024 election, behind the EFF and MK. And we can see from the results on the left that the ANC has had a steady decline here. I mean, they used to be over 1,300 votes in 2016, 1,400 in 2019. Now they just have 904 votes here. As for the DA, they only had 131 votes here in 2016, yet now they have over 550 votes. And so again, we see the situation where the DA is rising in these kinds of wards. And even if they're not winning, they're the party that seems to have the main growth, whereas the others, such as the EFF, MK, and ANC, are on the decline. Now, of course, this rightward shift isn't just from the ANC to the likes of the DA. We're also seeing what I would call a true rightward shift, where the DA is losing votes to the Freedom Front Plus, and do seem to be losing elections to the PA, although they're not necessarily losing that many votes to them. And this specific ward result in a by-election shows this. So here we have the George Ward 27 by-election. And what we saw here is how the Patriotic Alliance shot up from virtually nowhere in 2021 to actually win this ward for the first time ever. So we see, if we scroll a little further down, that in the 2021 election, the Good Party was actually the winner of this ward. And the DA came in second. As we see, the Good Party had 725 votes. The DA had 600 votes. The ANC was pretty much a no-show. And then PBI also did pretty well, coming just behind the DA. And for those who don't know them, they're just a local party, but they are very much sort of a nationalist, coloured centric party, much like Good, much like the PA. Now, what we saw in the 2026 by-election is that, yes, the PA overtook the DA, and the DA did lose quite a few votes, but not that many. What seems to have actually happened here is that the PA were able to scoop up ANC votes, although there weren't that many in the first place. They were managing to scoop up PBI votes because PBI never competed in this by-election, as well as the Good Party, who also never competed. There's also been another phenomenon that's happened whereby the PA has been able to mobilize voters who previously never voted. And so managing to tap into the non-voter base has been very helpful to them as well. And what's happened here in this George by-election is something we've seen in the Western Cape as a whole, whereby, yes, the PA are able to take some votes off the DA, but the DA largely remains intact. The way that the PA is getting their most growth is through either taking votes off the ANC, taking votes off the other coloured-centric parties, such as Good, or getting new voters to turn out. And so that's why I say that this is a little bit of a different situation, because the PA seems to be more coloured focused as well as regional focused, specifically in the Western Cape, the Northern Cape, the western parts of the Eastern Cape, and then certain parts of Gauteng. But of course, there's the true rightward shift which is happening from the DA to the Freedom Front Plus. While we did see the Freedom Front Plus win votes off the DA in the recent by-election in Saldanha Bay, this was quite minor compared to what happened in Tshwane, Pretoria, earlier on in the year. You see, in this specific by-election, we saw the Freedom Front Plus come very close to actually taking the seat off the DA. You see, the Freedom Front Plus had just 806 votes here in the 2024 election, which is 7.8%. Now, of course, by-elections have a very low turnout, And the Freedom Front Plus went from 806 votes to 1,359 votes, or 44.38%. And of course, as I mentioned, that spike in percentage is mostly due to fewer voters turning up. As for the DA, they utterly collapsed. They had 5,896 votes here in 2024, yet they only got 1,629 votes in the 2025 by-election. And so they saw an enormous drop in enthusiasm. Now, of course, people will argue, well, it's a by-election, you expect fewer voters to turn out anyway. But if this is the case, which I do believe it to be the case a lot of the time, why is it that the Freedom Front Plus were able to get their highest ever results in this ward? Clearly, there was a spike in enthusiasm for them, and if the low turnout of by-elections is to believe, then perhaps the Freedom Front Plus and the DA will rise in support when the municipal election comes around. Now, what does all of this show us? Well, it shows us that there does indeed seem to be a rightward shift happening in South Africa, and we can take a look at some polling data in order to sort of verify this. So here we have a recent national election poll from the Social Research Foundation in March. Now, of course, I'm not saying that this is necessarily accurate and that this is going to be the outcome of a national election. This is really just a snapshot in time of a certain group of voters, of course. But we do know that the SRF is one of the most accurate pollsters in South Africa. They came probably the closest out of anyone to projecting the outcome of the 2024 election. And so they definitely have a lot of credibility. And so their polls shouldn't be dismissed lightly. But what we do see in this poll is that the DA seems poised to go up to 28% from around 21, 22%. We see the IFP rising from about 3.5% to 5%, which is a rightward shift because in KZN, we see how the IFP seems to be taking a lot of wards off of the ANC NFP, which is a breakaway party of the IFP, and they seem to be beating MK in a lot of places where MK were the victors in 2024. And so there does actually seem to be a Zulu rightward shift as well. And so this contributes to the rightward shift overall that we see in South Africa. We then see how the Freedom Front Plus polled at 4%, which is pretty much their highest ever, and the Patriotic Alliance was at 3%. Now, according to the sort of discussions that they've had on the Common Sense, which of course is the same people that do the SRF, they seem to believe that what may be happening here is that the EFF and MK and those parties are losing voters and their voter turnout is going lower. Some people might be supporting the ANC who supported them in the past, and so they're mostly steady. But other ANC and those kinds of supporters might be flocking to the DA, especially in places like Joburg, where you have Helen Zille, because of the service delivery offering. And then, of course, we see how the DA seems to be losing votes to the Freedom Front Plus and to a lesser extent the PA. And so if we were to take this result as gospel, which I'm not saying we do, but if we were to use it just for experiment's sake, and we add up what the DA got, which is 28%, the Freedom Front Plus, which is 4%, the PA, which is 3%, and then, of course, the IFP, which is 5%, that adds up to 40% of the vote. And so ultimately what that means is that when you look at the other parties, that's around 60%. And if we look specifically at the ANC, MK, EFF block, so really that leftist block, well, you've got 39%, you've got 6%, and you've got 10%, which is 55%. And already that is a drop from around the 63% that the ANC, EFF, and MK collectively had in 2024. Now, as I mentioned, this is just one poll, and the elections are still a few months in the pipeline. So a lot can happen between now and then. But I think that we are already seeing a trend emerging, both with polls, but also with real results from by-elections, which is that indeed a rightward shift is happening. And ultimately, what this could mean is that we end up with a few right-leaning governments in South Africa, at least on the local level. For example, we saw how in Pretoria, in Tshwane, the DA had to partner with the likes of the IFP, ACDP, and Freedom Front Plus, which are their natural allies, as well as Action SA. And they were able to form a majority government in Tshwane. What's really interesting this time around is that according to a lot of polling data, it seems that they could be within the 40 to 45% range, and the Freedom Front Plus is also enjoying a groundswell. And so what we could end up seeing is a situation where you have a DA Freedom Front Plus coalition in Pretoria, whereby parties who are more unpredictable, like the Patriotic Alliance or Action SA, are excluded entirely. They don't even have to be thought of when forming a government. We also see how in places like Nelson Mandela Bay, the DA seems to be polling very highly. They have been the largest party there in the past. And of course, as the Freedom Front Plus grows in prominence and the DA manages to chip away at the ANC and other parties, there too, we could see a DA Freedom Front Plus style coalition. And there are a lot of smaller councils where this could be the case as well. The bottom line is this. It seems that finally South Africa is catching up with the rest of the world, whereby the rightward shift that we see in the US and the UK and even other places like South America seem to be happening in South Africa as well. And the next elections will certainly be ones to watch. Thank you very much for tuning into this video. If you enjoyed it, please remember to subscribe to the channel for more content. Until next time, I'm Matthew Cohen, and this is the Power Pod.